Thank you for joining tonight's Let's Talk Avelo webinar. I'm excited to present some of our esteemed guests. We have with us tonight CEO Aviad Cahana of Avelo. We have CEO Jason Leggatt from Shearwater. We have our Education Director, Jay Schiesser from Avelo. And we'll have a few more guests joining us tonight. As the evening comes on, our chief technician is on the road busy as we prepare to start new Avelo dive centers. We've got a lot of exciting growth coming in the next year, and we look forward to sharing that growth announcement with you at the end. We'll be at DEMA, and you can find some of the information about DEMA and where those announcements are. And we have some important announcements tonight that I believe Jason may make for us. So let's dive into Let's Talk Avelo. I'd like to start with Aviad. Could you share with us your insights about what is the Avelo mode, how are Avelo dive profiles different, and what is the dive analysis tool?
Yes. So hello all. Thank you for joining us. The Avelo mode, just like any other mode of a dive computer where you have recreational and you have closed circuit, for example, the Avelo mode is designed for the Avelo system. And that is because we have the ability to pump water into the tank and the bladder inside the tank is compressing, it increases the pressure. And that's something that we can log. That means that we can use that data to know more things about the diver and when they behave and why they do the things that they do, especially as it relates to their buoyancy control. So the Avelo mode is unique in that for open circuit scuba, we can actually see a lot of both the physics and the physiology of the diver in a way that's very interesting both for us and for the diver. And I'll show you what it looks like. We have something that is called the dive analysis tool. And it looks like this. I hope you can all see it. This is the page that we have on our site. When you upload your dive profile, an Avelo dive profile is different than a regular dive profile in that when you look at regular dive profile, you can see here the blue is the depth, and you can see the right side, it has the depth. This is all in meter. We are strong believers in the metric system, and so this page right now is in metric, but you can see the depth, and this is the blue profile. And on the left here, you can see the green and you can see the pressure profile. You can see that the pressure is constant until the diver pumps water into the tank and then it goes up. And that allows us to see, we can compare that data and say if the pressure went up by so much, that means that there's so much water in the tank. And then you can turn on and see the bladder volume, for example. So the inner bladder in the tank has compressed, and you can see that the red line here went down. And we track other things. We track the temperature of the gas, for example, and we're also looking at the diver workload, which at this point we're measuring this in liters per minute. And you can see there's graphs that you can turn on and off. But all this data that we collect on the diver actually translates to their buoyancy. So I'm going to scroll down, and you can see that we're actually tracking the buoyancy of the diver relative to perfect neutral buoyancy. What we're tracking on this graph, you can see here on the left, is the force on a diver in terms of kilograms of force, which means every diver, every time that you're neutral buoyancy, there's a certain zero that will be perfect neutral buoyancy, and from there, the forces that develop on you are either up or down. The purple line will show you what's that force on you when you dive, and this is with our system. With the Avelo system, you will always be very, very close to neutral buoyancy, which is why, and it's easy to track. When you have a BCD or what we define as a pneumatic buoyancy control device, or essentially an airbag that can inflate or deflate and is influenced by ambient pressure, those forces are much, much larger on you. With Avelo, the force on you is relatively small, and we compare it to your tidal volume. In the green line, between the two green lines, is the forces that you can easily control by just breathing normally. And what we're observing is that when you pump water into the tank and you reduce your buoyancy and you bring it closer to zero, closer to perfect neutral buoyancy, you can see the purple line going in and you're tracking in. You can see the workload or how hard you're working on the water very quickly diminishing, and you can see a trend that it goes down and it becomes better and better and better as the dive progresses. And you can track after the dives, you can actually look at it, and you can become better and better with each dive by comparing your workload to buoyancy. Obviously, there's many other things that affects workload through the dive. This is not the only thing, but it is a tool that didn't exist so far. And it's important, and we are tracking patterns on over a large population and are seeing big differences in air consumption rates and air consumption trends. And you can see the same diver, starting a dive with a higher workload, and you can see that down here, if you're looking at the values down here, you can see that it's pretty low. This is a lot of information. It is all explained when you're taking the recreational Avelo diver program. This is explained, and in fact, your instructor will go over that with you at the end of the dive as an introductory. So I think, Jennifer, that answers your question about what does our profile look like and how they're different. And I will stop sharing here.
There's a lot to unpack there. So everyone here hopefully is familiar with the Avelo system, and the Avelo mode has now been introduced to you with a bit of a deep dive. I'd like to take it back a step and ask Jason to talk about what the Avelo mode is doing on Shearwater computers.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Leggatt, CEO of Shearwater Research. Good to see you on here. And I was also asked to show some computer screen. And I will answer that question, Jennifer, but I wanted to just start with a brief introduction to how we got to know Avelo in the first place and what caused us to see the opportunity to create the Avelo mode on Shearwater computers. So you can tell me if that worked. Did I share successfully?
Yes.
Okay, so there's very few slides here, but I wanted to start with Shearwater's mission is to build better tools to safely enable people to do greater things underwater, to really expand the limits of human potential underwater. And our founder, Bruce Partridge, was famous for making a tech diving statement, but was really about task loading underwater, all the things that a diver needs to be aware of. And we were extremely thrilled when I joined the Shearwater business to meet Aviad and the Avelo team and the technology that they were developing, to see that way they really shared that mission to build a better tool, or as their slogan says, to try to deliver simply better scuba. And so it was sort of like a match made in heaven in terms of their vision for what diving can really be like, and what Shearwater is trying to bring to diving also. And so understanding the Avelo system, and I think everyone who's joined this webinar has had some introduction, Aviad covered it. Our computers, particularly our TX or air integrated computers, can measure the pressure in the tank, but Avelo is doing something very unique, which was causing the pressure to rise. And of course, our computers and our algorithms were quite shocked by the fact that you dove and you brought along a compressor with you. And so the computer didn't know what to do with things like gas time remaining or surface air consumption because of that phenomenon. So the Avelo mode was really designed to handle that, to take the power of the precision instruments that Shearwater is making and this really unique technology that Avelo is bringing into the diving world to really allow you to kind of do these three things with precision. So to have a percent gas remaining that you can count on, to calculate your buoyancy or see a representation of your buoyancy in real time, and then also to provide post-dive analysis, which can lead to greater mastery as you get used to diving the system and understand your own physiology and how that plays out with diving the Avelo system. So the Shearwater computers do those things. Sorry, I thought I moved to that slide here. Very pretty. So the Shearwater computers do those things. And currently that's available through the gas monitoring, alerts, continuous logging, and a big bright display, right? So you can see all that while you're diving. This is what the Avelo mode looks like on a Terek dive computer. And there's two modes. And I believe, Aviad, some of the people tuning in would have done the training or Avelo online training before the dive computer module with Avelo modes was built into that. And so they may not have seen that. If you've done Avelo training more recently, you would see, or you can go back into your dashboard and see the module that now includes how to use a air integrated computer on Avelo, and in particular the Shearwater Terek. And you have two modes on the left of the screen here. You're seeing the training mode, and then on the right, you're seeing the performance mode. And so for anyone who's dove Avelo, in the training mode, you're following the gas management card or table that Avelo provides. And you want to know your max pressure at the start of your dive, and you follow that to safely. And we still present to you constantly T1 or your tank pressure, because we want the diver to know what their pressure is all the time. And just so you can also see a quick visual when you run the pump that your pressure is going up, which means your purge is close. That's super cool. And then on the right, really cool stuff. And I love diving Avelo because of the freedom, and I'm really starting to love it even more as I dive it more and more, because I feel like I'm in control of the dive, but in a way that's so much more precise than I was on traditional because of the power of the Avelo mode. I'm getting used to the idea of like knowing how to calibrate my starting buoyancy. And I think there was a question actually in the chat about, well, how do you calibrate the computer to get a starting buoyancy, and how do I use that with the buoyancy calculations? I think we can answer that later. But once you've done that properly, you can really start to, as Aviad likes to say, I think, thread the needle and really dive your dive in a state of perfect neutral buoyancy and experience true flight underwater, which is, it's honestly just absolutely incredible. So that's the answer to your question, Jennifer, because it's incredible to fly underwater, not just because of the neutral buoyancy, but because of the lightweight, because of the streamlined. You don't have a ton of stuff, bulky stuff hanging off of you. And it's just phenomenal. And so seeing that workload, which is really a kind of representation of your surface air consumption and how calm you are, how chill and zen you are in the moment, breathing and enjoying the dive, but also being at perfect neutral buoyancy and then managing that. The Avelo mode's really giving you a ton of power to be in control underwater, which is super cool. I kind of described these things, what the max P is and what T1 is. And again, in the RAD training, this stuff's covered now in section 3. And then the performance mode, these attributes. So again, in order to set your buoyancy on the Avelo mode, we've actually made it possible for you in the dive when you say to yourself, even if your calibration was off, and I think Ed was the one who asked the question, when you feel like, hey, this is perfect for me, this is where I want to be when I'm neutrally buoyant, you can hit the function button and then which is your bottom left on a Terek, and then your top right to reset the buoyancy to neutral. And then you get a reset view of from there, as you breathe off, you're going to get a little more buoyant, and you're going to see that value go up. And it can give you some indication of when you would like to run the pump again. That color of the buoyancy is going to go yellow when you're getting outside of your tidal volume range. So that, again, really allows you to be in control of your dive, which is super awesome. And then this is me diving, because I was like jealous of like all the images of the Avelo people of themselves diving the system. So I had to like sneak in a picture of myself here diving the system. You can just see, like, for me, I mean, I'm in Vancouver. We usually have a lot of stuff on. Of course, this warm water diving, it's different, but I think the picture, this is, thank you, Jennifer. The picture really demonstrates just how streamlined the system is, though. It's just phenomenal, phenomenally freeing to dive. And we're super excited to be able to put the Avelo mode on the Shearwater computer. If you want to know how to enable it, you can go to our website. It's very simple. It's available on the Terek with an unlock. you know, reach out to your local dealer or Avelo Dive Center, and they purchase the unlock from them. We're going to email them an unlock code. We're going to need the serial number for your Taric. You can get that from your settings, system info. And then you connect your computer to the Shearwater Cloud app via Bluetooth. And right in the menu that's going to come up to your connected computer, it says unlock features. You click that, enter the unlock code, and it pushes the Avelo Mode to your computer, and it's available. So it's perfect. Exciting announcement coming soon. The Terex 1 air integrated dive computer Shearwater makes. We make a whole bunch. These are just the 3 most popular computers. In addition to the Terex, the Peregrine TX, which just came out in May. Super exciting, extremely great value computer. You can get that with a pressure transmitter for $1,000 US, which is the best value in the industry by far on an air integrated computer. The Turn computer, the Terex, which already has the Avelo Mode, and then the Perdix as well, are all going to have the Avelo Mode later this fall around the DEMA timeframe. So we're super excited about that, to open up the options for people, not only to sort of get a new computer that's capable of Avelo Mode, but many people already have a bunch of these different types of computers, and you're going to be able to unlock this feature on the computer you already own, which is super awesome.
That's a big deal, being able to offer the Avelo Mode on your entire suite of computers. And we're very excited to see that come here soon. I see there are some people in our chat who are already Shearwater divers, and we're wondering if the workload RMV is available as an average for the entire dive. Can you speak to that?
It is not in. You can talk more about the Avelo Mode math, but no, that's not exactly going to be true. And you're not going to be able to calculate an average per se. I think you can talk to why that might not be relevant either.
It's not currently, but Craig, you asked the question, and we can talk more even after this. The way that we look at the profiles, and I don't know if everybody needs to be bored with this, but I can show you again the profiles. The way that we look at it is we're actually looking at momentarily what your workload looks like as a result of something that you've done underwater. It's important for us to see if you were outside of your comfortable breathing range, or you were swimming against the current. So for us, the workload is a physiological response to something that happened underwater, and that helps you improve for other dives. So it's a tool like that. An RMV through the entire dive, just, you can statistically look at many dives that you have, and then you know about what your average is, which is an interesting point by itself, just not for the Avelo Mode. I do think that the files are all coming with a CSV. You can export a CSV file, and that is very much calculatable. And you can get your RMV as an average for the whole dive, which will be, a simple average for the data point. So you can do it as an output of a CSV file. We just solve for something different. We solve, our resolution is a lot greater on that because we're looking at events in the dive.
Thank you. We can get into that again at the end if people still have more questions for that. I did want to touch while we're talking about Shearwater computers. Dan had a good question about the availability of unlocking the Avelo Mode on all of the computers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I believe that every computer has a unique unlock code.
Yeah, the safest, because that didn't come up in the FAQs that might get answered, so I don't have a prepared answer for that. So the safest and unpopular answer would be that we're going to have to sell an unlock that's specific to the serial number. But I like the concept behind the question, which is, hey, I've already got 1,000 Shearwater computers that I put on all my different limbs, and do I really have to pay the same amount to unlock them all? It's an interesting question that we're going to take to the drawing board before we release the actual program and come up with a better answer than the safe answer, which is currently it's designed so the unlock is per computer.
We've got a lot of Shearwater divers in the audience. So they also want to know if we can unlock Avelo Mode on a 2-year-old Peregrine. to that end to any old
So
Shearwater?
you will not be able to, because the 2-year-old Peregrine was not air integrated. So it did not have the transmitter capable PCA in the computer. So that product, the Peregrine TX product that has the antenna and capabilities for air integration, came out this May. So unfortunately that won't be true. But if you have a 2-year-old Perdix, it would absolutely be true, or even a Petrel, you'll be able to unlock the Avelo mode on those computers, even though you might have bought it several years ago.
Which is a great point. It's all air integrated Shearwater
Yeah, so
computers.
if you have a computer at the time that these new firmware and software releases come out, that is air integrated from Shearwater, you'll absolutely be able to purchase and unlock without having to get a new computer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing some of your time and some of your personal experiences with Avelo. Well, we've talked a bit about how the Avelo mode is a teaching aid. And we have with us Jay Schiesser, and Ross is also available for some questions and for his insight as well. But I'd like to kick off with Jay to talk about how we train people to dive the Avelo system in a recreational Avelo diver program, and how important the Avelo mode is to that training.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be here with you tonight, or today, as the case is for me here on Maui. So the Avelo, first place you want to start is obviously at the Avelo Dive Center. We have multiple dive centers around the world now. You can look those up on our website and just get in touch with one of the dive centers, and they'll be able to schedule you for the class. The class is basically about an hour to an hour and a half of e-learning. And then we have 2 dives that we do. So it's very similar to specialties that you're probably already familiar with. And the class is basically anyone can do it. As long as you're a certified open water diver with any agency, you qualify to be able to take the class. You do need to be at least 12 years old. However, right now we are not having 10-year-olds participate in the Avelo recreational Avelo diver program.
Does the Avelo mode and training the Avelo mode as part of your recreational Avelo diver course happen, and how important is it to your understanding of the Avelo system?
So as Aviad said earlier, that it's part of the class at the end of your 2 dives. We will go over your dive profiles with you so that you can take a look and see how that workload corresponds to different parts of your dive. One thing that we've noticed, that anytime someone's doing a skill, it doesn't really matter how experienced you are, or if you're a new diver. When you do a skill, let's just take equipment remove and replace, for instance, you are going to increase your workload. And as experienced divers, we pretty much don't really feel that, because we're so experienced in controlling our buoyancy that even though we are getting a little bit more anxious, it doesn't seem like to us that we actually are increasing our workloads. But pretty much 100% of the profiles we've looked at, and they've been thousands of them up till now, that include a skill, we see an increase in workload. And that's something that surprised myself. I considered myself a pretty experienced diver, and I didn't ever have any problems with buoyancy underwater, or so I thought. What I didn't realize was that as we got out of that comfortable zone of neutral buoyancy that Aviad talked about, our workload went up. And even though you're only talking about a half a kilo of force, either up or down, when you get out of that smaller zone, your workload will go up. And seeing that on those profiles really clicks in, where you say, that's very interesting. I always just thought my breathing was the same whether I went up 15 or 20 feet or went down 15 or 20 feet. And that is definitely not the case with wearing a BCD, where that expandable bubble is getting larger or smaller. You are having to work harder when you're breathing to overcome that bubble that's expanding or contracting. So that was a really big thing that made a lot of sense to me, and I think makes a lot of sense to divers when they see those profiles, that they can kind of click in and say, yeah, you know what, my buoyancy's been perfect. I can dump my BC and do the whole dive without having to add or take air out of the BC. Sure, people can do that. However, your workload is definitely increasing, and we can show that now with the profiles, and it's basically science. It's not anything that's, one person is better at the other. It's just that we breathe harder as we have to overcome that bubble. So that's one of the things that to me is very exciting when we're teaching the class, and I really enjoy seeing the light bulbs go off with students when they look at those profiles and they really understand, oh, okay. And then when we look at next dives that we do with the students, when they're just guided dives, we can a lot of places we see marketable decreases in the amount of work that they have to do during the dives, and that ultimately increases their bottom time. And we've seen bottom times increase by 10, 15, 20%, basically almost overnight. So it's pretty exciting to be able to use that Avelo mode as a tool when we're teaching.
That touches on some of the advantages of teaching the Avelo system, certainly to being an Avelo diver. There are a number of advantages as it relates to buoyancy, and of course the equipment is obviously lightweight, which will help people's comfort in the system. But what are some of the other advantages you have in teaching the Avelo system from an instructor perspective?
Well, obviously, as an instructor, the first thing that I noticed about the system was it's going to be a lot safer to teach students diving. When you are teaching with standard scuba and you turn around, you never know when one of those students is going to be floating up to the surface uncontrollably. And with the Avelo system, it's virtually impossible for a student to rapidly ascend or descend. So as an instructor, it just becomes much more enjoyable to teach. And when we get to the Avelo diver course, which will be down the road, where we're teaching students that are not certified, I think it's going to really be a wonderful opportunity to see the differences in teaching on the Avelo system as opposed to the BCD. So that's one advantage, is that. The other advantages, of course, are system is much more streamlined. So again, your air consumption can go down when you're diving in currents. We've had a couple places in Key Largo, and Ross can probably speak to this a little bit, where there's some currents that are around wrecks, and when they're diving with students or even with just guided divers, they have to kind of stay below the wrecks to stay out of that current. And they would never go above the wreck and get into that current because it would just be too much. And with the Avelo system, there have been instances where people have gone above that and into the current and basically just been able to swim right across the deck of the wreck without having any issues. Ross, you could probably talk a little bit more about that. You have a lot more experience with that in the Keys than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, sorry I was late getting on, new computer technology. All that said, I have thankfully not had to be in a BC since I was certified as a rad diver back in February. And I say that wholeheartedly because it has revolutionized the way that not only do I dive, but I teach. And I even mean that with the profiles that admittedly, when I first saw the profiles, Aviad and Jay were showing them to me, and they were like, "This is this and this." And I said, "That's great. It's a bunch of lines on a screen, and it means nothing to me." I literally just taught a rad to one of my instructors, and she was like, "Oh my God, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And I said, "I know," because you can literally say to people, "You were comfortable here." Yes. And then show them why. And one of the things that interestingly enough, I was just able to do, I was doing a bunch of dives on the Spiegel Grove and the Duane, deeper wrecks, especially the Duane currents and things like that. And I actually tracked the dives. And I brought my instructors in and I said, "Hey, what were you doing? What were you thinking here?" They said, "I wasn't thinking anything." I said, I know. Look at this. This is where all the other students were floating off the wreck, and we were literally just there. And yeah, sure, we were in that little bit of a pitch like this, so the water was going over us, but we were so streamlined, we were still able to navigate the entire wreck into the current and still maintain a good sack rate that the instructors were able to track. So they then have been able to go to their students and use this information. So I think the hand holding that we've been doing with Shearwater, thank you, with the dive profiles, and the ability to take a specialty and turn it into more than a specialty, into a new way of diving. Because yes, once we don't have the 9 to 12 BC skills that we have to do in an open water course, it makes the actual open water course, the entry-level course, about simply breathing the dive, thinking the dive. How do you become one with the water? How do you think? It is so much more immersive, and I mean that totally pun intended with the water, because it is that much more closer to the water that we're actually in. It's phenomenal.
So if you wanted to become an Avelo instructor, how does getting your RAD set you up for success in understanding the Avelo system and in counting toward your instructor?
So RAD is obviously the first part, and the Avelo Instructor course is laid out on the website if you want the information. There are some prerequisites as far as certifications go to qualify for the pro course. And then you need to have 10 total Avelo dives before you can take the class. The 2 dives that you do during your Avelo certification do count toward those 10 dives. And the pro class itself is 3 days long. The first 2 days are similar to what the instructor development course would be, where we're basically just training. We have academic presentations that we do at PowerPoints, as all training does, unfortunately. We still haven't figured out how to make that simply better scuba. And then we'll get in the water and we'll do skill circuits. We'll do some simulated rescues. Some of the things that are different with diving Avelo, we want to focus on so that you understand the true differences between the BC and the diving with Avelo. The final day is then what would be the exam. We have a final written exam. We have some presentations that you do. And it's basically just a recap or going back over the things that you did the previous 2 days. So that is the course. You will watch at least one RAD class being taught before you take the class. And then if possible, we'd like to have an existing Avelo instructor. Typically, it would be from your Avelo dive shop center that would shadow you as you teach your first classes. So we really like to make sure that you're comfortable with teaching those. The instructors are teaching the recreational Avelo diver course, that you have that comfort knowing that an existing instructor is there with you to make sure that everything goes the way it should go.
I love all the experience that's being talked about the potential for the system and influencing divers also beyond the Avelo system. Ross touched on the experience people had in streamlining and swimming across on the wreck, being able to stay there, and also in the potential that his instructors saw from learning from their profiles. We have so much more that we can apply this to. I think as instructors, you've both seen your RAD divers then even go back into a standard scuba system and have aha moments about the technology they've been diving. As
Absolutely.
It relates.
Absolutely. I live for the aha moments. We try to put people in, especially our students, in the best arenas so that they can learn from their students, because the students are going to be the ones that teach the most to our instructors anyway. Yes, we're going to teach the techniques, we're going to teach the ideas and everything like that, but really the hands-on, the individual students that they're going to meet are going to teach them so much more. So in doing that, we've got to be able to have all that information, have all that experience ourselves so that we can say, okay, this is the foundation. This is where we're going to rest on the laurels of the SMB. One of the techniques that we've been developing and really across the board now, even into my BC IDCs, I'm teaching the use of the SMB, because the SMB, the service marker buoy, is one of the most powerful tools in a rescue. It's 8 pounds of lift. Hand it to them, they've got a lift. Everybody asks, how do you do a rescue in Avelo? Why is it that you can do this? How are we going to do this? You're at swimmer's buoyancy. Yeah, sure. Well, lifeguards do it all the time. And now you've got something that's literally strapped to your hip every single time that you dive. Utilize it, pull it out, blow it up, use your auto, any and all of the above. Every single one of the instructors that I have taught the Avelo Pro have gone, oh my God, why don't you use this all the time in regular scuba? And I said, you're right. Why don't you? Go ahead. Parallel this. Let's bring this into the world of scuba. By the way, we're just changing the world of scuba. That's all. We're adding to it. So all of the so-called misconceptions of it's different scuba, it's not. We're simply breathing underwater without a big balloon on our back. And that's the coolest thing.
Thank you. So we've got all the toolkits, we've got our class, we're coming along as an Avelo instructor, and now we're out there in the field. How can a Avelo instructor, say, have a dive master work as a guided diver or lead them? And Jay, can you speak a little bit also about the insurance? We get this question a lot, and I just wanted to address insurance with Avelo.
Yeah, so the dive master, an existing dive master, as long as they have taken and passed or completed their recreational diver course, they are then able to lead Avelo divers. And already dive masters have been taught how to lead divers, but right now all you need is a working knowledge of how the Avelo system works. So by gaining your recreational Avelo diver certification, you will have that background knowledge to be able to deal with situations of, if someone hasn't dove Avelo in a while and they forget how to assemble their gear. Well, you need to know how to assemble the gear. So that's why we require, if you are an existing dive master, before you can lead Avelo divers on guided dives, you must at least have the RAD certification yourself. And the insurance now, we're very excited that we have DAN, Divers Alert Network insurance, that is accepting Avelo instructors. It's very simple. As long as you already have insurance through DAN, all you need to do is email them, ask for the Avelo endorsement, and then anytime you are teaching with Avelo equipment on your back or students have Avelo equipment on their backs, you are covered just like you would be teaching standard scuba. So that's very exciting that we have that relationship with Dan right now.
Jennifer, I'll add one more thing that, and I'll actually ask Jay and maybe Ross to comment. One thing that we've seen of teaching divers is the level of lung control that they accomplish after going, as Ross said, you have a person underwater. For the first time, they're actually experiencing lung control in a pure way without the BCD that throwing you off a little bit. And for those of you who hasn't done, if you didn't do the RAD class yet, you'll see that we're actually are doing a very big depth change through every class intentionally. So you can see your change in buoyancy. You can see that you can do everything with lung control. One thing that we noticed over the several years now that we've been teaching it is the level of lung control of a diver, even if they believe that their buoyancy currently is great, is tremendously better after the class. And you can see it by they're changing their breathing patterns to be more efficient and more relaxed after the dive. So again, Jay and Ross, if you want to comment on what you've seen from your experience of a regular diver diving, I'm sorry, a BCD diver diving coming in, and what do they look like after they go back to a BC, and what comment did you guys get about lung control?
Actually, if you don't mind, I recently had an instructor who has a tear in her diaphragm, and she was told recently that she needed to do some lung exercises and some breathing exercises, etc. And I went, oh, interesting. And she's cleared to dive and everything like that. So I said, all right, let's start working on let's just work on some breathing techniques. And yes, I've got a different background in singing and theater and such, but I bring those breathing techniques into Avelo, and I try to trick my divers into breathing like a speaker, like a singer, like something, because inevitably, the sooner we can learn how to control the way that we breathe, the better diver we're going to be. And I was able to show her on her profiles over the course of over a week that just by breathing her dive, not only was she maximizing her gas, she was also maximizing her sac rate. And all of her diving, when I asked her after, I said, how did you feel? She said, it was like I wasn't doing anything. I was just being. Exactly. So it's almost like at the beginning of the thing, if I could find a way to crawl into people's heads and trick them into thinking beyond what I want them to think about, which is breathing, and thinking into just swimming. I have them literally think about what it looks like to be a dolphin and dive. And I say, dive like a dolphin, go for it. You go, okay, because then they're thinking about streamlining. They're thinking about something else as opposed to thinking about breathing. And then with the profile, I could show them, this is where you actually managed to do something. What were you thinking about? And invariably, they will always say, I was a dolphin. There you go. So it's crazy. It really is. But you're letting people swim underwater and breathe with the Avelo system. And once they accept the fact that it's not a BC, it's not. You cannot dive the system like a BC. If you do, you're not going to be able to dive it, or you're going to dive it really poorly. So you have to. It's simply better scuba, yes, but simply different scuba. And it's a way of thinking. It's a way of swimming. It's a way of breathing differently. That with now the technology that we have with the Avelo Mode, that we can track things differently, track things better, track things more minutely. And the fact that the training allows us, we do the up down. We go 30 feet up. We take photos every 10 feet. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm not doing anything to actually maintain my neutral buoyancy. I'm just there. You're right. Let it be okay. That's one of the hardest things. The unlearning the BC is one of the more difficult things, really. So I can't wait for the entry level to take someone fresh and teach them without the balloon how to dive. That's going to be, for me, a game changer.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Jay. That's pretty powerful messaging on Avelo Instructor and the experience of Avelo. It's exciting to bring a safer product that is so enjoyable to dive. There are some nuances. This is an ecosystem. We have with us tonight, we have Shearwater talking about the Avelo Mode. Aviad touched on the dive analysis tool. And then you and Jay both spoke to life as an Avelo instructor. I see you wearing our Avelo Technician shirt. We also have Brett with us to talk about how this all integrates with Avelo Technician and what maintenance is like. is part of this big Avelo ecosystem of tools that provide a better diving experience. Brett, could you come online and introduce yourself and talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be a technician and a technician trainer? And I think, are you a technician trainer now too? You are? Congratulations. It's
He is
awesome.
indeed. Yeah.
I have the cut hands to prove it.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Brett. I'd love to hear about technician.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, good. Thank you, Jennifer, and welcome to everybody who has joined us today, and a very good afternoon. Yeah, so we've heard of all these great benefits of the Avelo system, but yes, somebody has to look after them and make sure that they can actually go diving with the system, and that comes down to the Avelo Technician. And very pleased, as you just pointed out, to have Ross as one of our technician trainers. So that's amazing, and glad to have him on here today. An Avelo Technician. So how do you become an Avelo Technician? Or what is an Avelo Technician? So an Avelo Technician generally evolves starting with the RAD course. So the Avelo RAD is a requirement before becoming an Avelo Technician, and that is so that the person that is going to be repairing the gear becomes familiar with each of the components and how it works, how it feels, the look, touch, feel. So to become a RAD diver before becoming a technician is pretty important, so you understand the nuances of the system. We also would prefer that the person has a propensity for service and repairs. Luckily, at this stage, we are dealing with dive centers already, and they generally have a service technician on their staff. So they do have some sort of service background, which is great. And we also like the person to have some experience with visual inspections of a regular scuba tank. Obviously, our hydro tanks are slightly different. However, the process is the same. So if they have some experience with visual inspections, that is would be fantastic. Once an Avelo service technician is certified, they then become responsible for all of the Avelo gear that is held on site, wherever that may be. And so they will then obviously record all the service and maintenance. They get access to an Avelo dashboard, and all of the service and maintenance is carried out and filled in on the dashboard. They also record all of the equipment that is on site, so that is by serial number. So most of the components of the Avelo system do have a serial number, and they are tracked. And so any repairs or maintenance that is done to any component of the Avelo system is recorded and will be tracked by the service technician via the serial number. So that's a great way of record keeping. So, and they will be responsible for that. They're also responsible for data management. So, obviously I've just mentioned that everything comes with the serial number. So they'll be tracking the parts, any parts ordering, the components fitted to any replacement parts that get switched out at any time. So it's quite a big responsibility being a service technician. It's not just a matter of fixing something or repairing something as it's brought in. There's a lot of background to it as well.
Awesome. And the Avelo system basic maintenance is visual inspection. As you mentioned, there's some custom things involved in that as it relates to our system. The hydrostatic is every 5 years. But if I have an Avelo system, where do I find your Avelo technicians?
Yeah, so every ADC or Avelo dive center is required to have an Avelo service technician on staff. So as Jay mentioned earlier, you can do a search geographically for any ADC, and that is where you're going to find an Avelo technician. So with regards to the maintenance of the Avelo system, so there's it's made up of the Velo system is made up of two major components, which is the jetpack and the hydro tank. The jetpack then can be split down into components, which is going to consist of your hardware that is fitted to the backplate. It's going to consist of the wiring harness with the caps that drive the motor and house the battery, and then of course the soft goods, which is all the webbing. There is very little maintenance on the jetpack itself, other than general wear, which may happen over time, which is standard on any scuba gear. The battery, which is another component of the jetpack, has no maintenance. So other than running diagnostics on the battery itself, if the battery fails, you dispose of the battery within your local authority regulations. So no maintenance on the battery. The pump itself, which is another component of the jetpack, consists of the motor, the pump body, and a spool valve, check valve setup. The motor and the pump itself, at this point in time, are not field serviceable, so no maintenance on that. Once you've diagnosed that it needs some maintenance, it'll get sent back to the supplier. So very little maintenance on that. The spool valve and check valves, yes, they can be serviced and cleaned. So not a lot of maintenance on the Avelo system, which is absolutely fantastic. Where the maintenance comes in is with the hydro tanks, as you just mentioned. That is something very different to the standard scuba tank, in that we have a bladder that is inserted into the tank. And of course, our tanks are what we call COPV, which is a carbon overwrap, and the inside is a aluminum liner. But inside of that vessel is a bladder, and the bladder is the membrane which separates the water and the air, obviously the breathing gas that is inside the bladder. So that's the difference between a scuba tank and our Avelo hydro tank.
That is very technical, Brett. Thank you. Have you enjoyed being an Avelo technician, Ross? No. Oh, he needs help with the unmuting, I think. I can just put words in his mouth for him.
The unmuting is more difficult than the technician. Actually, I really have. So fortunately, I just got to visit Steelhead, which was amazing to see the ins and outs of the tank and the bladders and the spinning and the hook and pull, and it's remarkable. The simplicity of the units is really what I find the best, because it's almost like the old 1980s if then. If this works, then great. If it doesn't, then we need to just do this, or this. There are not that many different fixes because it's so tooled, it's so thought about, it's so processed on how it can be a basic plug and play. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of things. Brett is a phenomenal hands-on instructor, a hands-on quality management, just the whole system between John and Evan, who takes everybody that takes care of the IT, that takes care of the gear itself. At no time have I felt, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I always have someone to reach out to, which is really wonderful. And the fact that we've got the gear that if it doesn't work, it's let's stop everything. Let's find out why. It was this, okay. Or, like Brett said, battery doesn't work, just dispose of it as per regulations. If it's a pump, let's take a look, troubleshoot it. If it's not going to work, we're going to send it back. We're going to figure out why. We're going to do another one, because it is simply, the industry is used to being able to take their gear out of their trunk of the car that's probably been there for 6 months, hasn't been serviced in a year and a half, and then go dive. So we have to be able to service that same mentality and make sure that it is safe. And that is first and foremost what the entire Avelo team has done. Rainbow, I could not ask of better support that they've given to us as a purveyor of the gear. We have people that are actually just flying in. Hey, I'm a RAD certified. Can we go? Yes, we've got guides that go on the boats with them. They help them set it up. They help them check. I've got check-ins. I've got all kinds of plays in motion to make sure that the gear is working. If it's not, why did it get washed? All of that kind of stuff. It's truly it's a warming handshake every time we dive and work with the Avelo team.
Thank you. This has been an in-depth look at all things professional with Avelo tonight. Everything from the technical side of the Avelo Mode. We can't thank enough for Jason Leggatt from Shearwater joining us this evening and sharing his time. I can't thank everyone else enough on the call for joining us and spending your evenings or mornings or days wherever you are in the world with us. And Jay, our education director, really dug into the Avelo Pro course instructor and how you can benefit from being an Avelo instructor, how to get on that path. And Brett just really dug into the nuts and bolts of the system. Wah, wah, wah.
Oh, I saw what you did. Wow.
So we had a little bit of technical fun tonight. If you have any questions, please ask those in the webinar. We will post this on our YouTube channel and then share that through our social media channels on Instagram and Facebook. Follow us at Dive Avelo on all these channels. Visit us at diveavelo.com. We'd love to see you at DEMA. We posted in the chat some of the details about our seminars, but you can find Avelo in booth 9122. You can find Shearwater in 7103 and Rainbow Reef at 7025. So it's going to be a hoppin' Vegas show. I hope to see everybody there. I see a lot of thanks from our audience members. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any last remarks from our panel this evening? No, we've done a good job. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Great to see everybody. I miss you all.